So recently, a bunch of unaired pilots found their way online, dating back to the 90s. What I want to do is look at these pilots and determine two things. 1. Did it have potential? And 2. How different would popular culture be if this pilot was picked up for series? Today we're opening up the pilot vault and looking at the pilot for a show without a name. An untitled Victoria Pile project, starring Stephen Mangan, Jane Lynch, Jason Alexander, a whole bunch of people, as police officers and other people who work in what is described as an eccentric police precinct. This is the second police comedy show we've looked at on Pilot Vault, the first being Times Square. It's mad, because when the first season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine aired, me and my sister were proper excited for it, because the idea of a comedy set in a precinct was really interesting. I used to love the Naked Gun movies and Police Academy, so I knew it was a goldmine for comedy. Well, it looks like networks have been trying to make a comedy cop show for years, but they just keep failing for some reason. And there's a good reason why this one didn't work out either. We'll get to that at the end. So the untitled Victoria Pile project is named as such because it never got a title, obviously. I even reached out to one of the actors, this guy, who plays a medical examiner, and he said there were never even any rumours on set about what it could be called. So maybe we can name it? Leave some ideas in the comments below for titles, and I'll heart the best one. Victoria Pile is the person who wrote Green Wing, a British TV show with Stephen Mangan and Tamsin Greig, who actually, they went to star in Episodes, a show about two British writers trying to make an American show. I wonder how much of this show influenced her. After all, because of this, he had first-hand experience watching a comedy transition from the UK to LA. Honestly, Victoria Pile is a really good comedy writer, but what happened to her? Look at her IMDb, she just vanished, and she doesn't have a Twitter or anything, so I can't exactly reach out to her. Weird. Right, let's talk about this show. It opens with Jason Alexander hanging out in a parking garage, being all mysterious, like he's Deep Throat from the X-Files. It was actually a really solid start, as any sense of mystery is thrown out the window as a trilogy of events happen. The detective he's meeting looks straight at him, then the lights of a car illuminate his face, and one of the other cops shouts, "Morning, Lieutenant." It was just a funny series of events to see everything fall apart so quickly. He ends up telling the detective that they'll carry on the meeting in his office. Jason Alexander tells him exactly which way to go to get out of the car park. He's clearly learned a lesson since the last time he was stuck in a parking structure. We then see all the detectives turning up to their shift, and it's styled in this really weird way, where all the boring stuff like them walking is sped up. I bet you that's the people in the editing room going, speed up the boring bits, so they would have to cut less scenes. Interestingly, this pilot has 2 stars from episodes in it. Stephen Mangan, like we mentioned before, and Kathleen Rose Perkins, who played Carol in episodes. The woman at the network who forces them to include Matt LeBlanc in the new show. I was a little worried about Stephen Mangan's American accent, and rightly so, it's not great. The police department is set in Glendale, but initially I read it as Greendale, which would make this a very different show. We have a bit with Detective Marcus struggling to get through security because he needs a pass, but he can't get through without a pass. Not necessarily a funny bit, but it is a bit that they went with, so...
You get the new guy.
No, don't give me the new guy, please. They're all the same. Where's the coffee? Where's the bathroom?
God, Stephen's accent. And here we all were, criticising David Tennant's American accent in Rex Is Not Your Lawyer. This is much, much worse. Like, there's no competition. I never say this, but I could probably do better. It's like he just heard every American accent imaginable and meshed them all into one. We hear that Stephen's character really wants to be part of the SWAT team, so he just watches them in envy. This is obviously setting up future storylines that we'll never get to see. One part that I really didn't like about this pilot was that they wrote exactly what was happening along the bottom of the screen. But the problem is, the script was so tight, from an obviously thorough series of redrafting, that these felt like they were appearing every 15 seconds. It would have been less annoying if it didn't make that typing sound every time it appeared. Honestly, it felt more like I was playing Ace Attorney than watching a sitcom. Oh yeah, Jane Lynch is in this. This will be her second appearance on Pilot Vault, after having a pointless role in Separated at Work. Her role in this is about as equally as pointless. She brings nothing to the table. I love Jane Lynch, but she's awful in these pilots. She just doesn't do anything. Yeah, I hate the weird sped up action. It genuinely feels like I'm watching this episode on 2x speed. I do that sometimes with like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. Some of those episodes are so slow and boring, it just needs speeding up a little. Otherwise I'm wasting 20 minutes of my life watching Mike walk through a building, only to grunt and then leave. So yeah, it reminds me of that. There's this joke they did, which can be basically boiled down to, I've just said something bad about someone who stood right behind me. It's so strange, I would have cut this. It wasn't funny. Just because it's a callback to classic humour, it doesn't mean it deserves a minute of screen time in your pilot.
Is he right here?
He's right behind me, isn't he?
I just sat there with a straight face throughout this entire scene. Try harder. Stephen Mangan's character, Detective Dan Little, is almost predatory, hitting on this woman. It doesn't fit his character at all, nor can Stephen pull it off, which is particularly weird, because someone I spoke to who worked on this pilot said that they was pretty certain the role was going to go to Stephen quite early on, because he auditioned for Stephen's role. So it wouldn't surprise me if Victoria Pyle wrote this role for him. So how does it miss him so drastically? I would also like to take a moment to talk about the two ghost police officers who vanish from the hallway in one scene. Look at them, just casually walking and they're gone. Ooh, spooky. I didn't edit this, by the way, they did. They put a knock knock joke into this pilot.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Green.
Green who?
A bit weird, innit? I did laugh at this scene though, between Detective Green and Carol from episodes. She is his counsellor, and she goes from telling him to relax to asking him really intense questions like, did you cry today? She's brilliant, Kathleen Rose Perkins. She's proper funny and nails it in this role. Honestly, every scene she's in, she steals. There's one later on where she believes Green has an imaginary friend when he tries to tell her about a problem he's having with someone. I'll play a clip rather than explain it.
Well, this is very common. My friend this and my friend that. Let's just get it out in the open, okay?
Okay, yeah, okay.
So, you have an imaginary friend. Big whoop. I would love to meet him. Is he here? Hi. I'm Sami Sherman.
No, he's not imaginary.
That's a great line, isn't it? See, this pilot is well written. There's just a few dud scenes and stylistic choices that I definitely wouldn't have made. Now, you know that I hate wedding planner scenes. We had an entire subplot dedicated to wedding planning in the Nancy Drew pilot. And in the Deborah Messing political pilot, we got one as well. So of course we've got one in this. Weddings are the most boring thing on the planet. Why did TV writers think I care about seeing one plan? Who cares about wedding planning? Stephen Mangan says, I guess you're not as stupid as you sound, which is ironic because with that accent, he sounds so stupid.
I guess you're not as stupid as you sound.
So there's a bit where there's a lineup and we see the medical examiner with them, and I was wondering, why is he in this scene? Because he didn't really do anything and he seems a bit out of place. Why use a medical examiner in a lineup? Well, his name is Sam Pancake, and I spoke to him while I was prepping for this video. I'll include a bit of what he said about his character.
I remember that I went in for the lead role. It was always called Victoria Pyle Untitled Project. I don't think it ever got a name. On my IMDb it still says Victoria Pyle Untitled. Me and Victoria hit it off in the audition, and I said, if I don't get this part, I'm happy to do the guest star part of the medical examiner. And then they gave it to me, which was very nice. And I remember I had a dead body, a fake dead body that I had to stick my hands in and be like I was examining it, but I was really grossed out by it. Like I was a medical examiner who was disgusted by human bodies, which was pretty funny.
So that's pretty cool, isn't it? He had a different scene in the episode that was cut. It's a shame we never got to see it, because a medical examiner who is scared of corpses is actually a really funny idea. It's strange how this is his only scene in the pilot. They really did him dirty here, just including this one scene.
Would you like to be my maid of honor?
Heck yeah, thank you.
And then the pilot just ends. There's no real big conflict or interesting thing that happens. It's just the characters wasting time until the day is over and they go home. They definitely should have done something else. Maybe have a problem that they have to overcome. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it, but that's just because the actors were great and the writer knew how to write good dialogue. But like you saw, I pointed out several scenes that could have been cut. And the reason they could have been cut is because nothing was happening. There was nothing to really drive this plot or its characters. And that's ultimately what let this pilot down. But still, it was better than a lot of the garbage we've looked at. So where would I rank this pilot among the other unaired pilots that we've talked about on Pilot Vault? Well, I'm gonna put this pretty high up. Like I said, it wasn't perfect, and it did suffer from a lack of focus. But I'd have watched this over, say, Rex Is Not Your Lawyer. You know what, maybe even more than Carlton Your Doorman. I'm gonna stick it in front of that. This pilot did have serious potential. It just needed focus, and it would have been great. It is no surprise to me that this was not picked up for a full series. Right, are there any other unaired pilots you want me to take a look at? I've got hundreds in the archive. Subscribe if you want to see me talk about more. Help us get to 4K. Right, I'll let you go. Bye.